Radio Mike is back on the podcast. Are you still going by Radio Mike like you were in episode 1 of this whole podcast which you debuted with me? What's going on?
Yeah, I was the first guest, and that was a long time ago, wasn't it? That was over a year ago now.
It's what is this? This is episode 45. So that's 44 guests ago you were on.
Wow. Yeah, I am still going as Radio Mike. At least I thought I was, but all of a sudden, out of the ether, the name Podcast Mike has just started to overtake it. And I get it. In principle, it makes sense because I actually do not currently do any work in radio. But it was always Radio Mike because it was actually a homage to Radio Bart, which is an episode of The Simpsons, where Bart, it's the Timmy O'Toole episode where Bart falls down the well.
Yes.
That episode's called Radio Bart. And it actually had nothing to do with me working in radio. It was just a homage to The Simpsons, which I talked about on episode 1 of your pod.
Yeah, I was about to say, did we discuss that? I can't even remember it so long ago. But so you weren't running the name Radio Mike pre-working in radio, were you, mate? That's a bit...
No, I definitely wasn't. No, I was kind of joking about that. But the initial plan, like I always thought when I was doing community radio before I went commercial and sold my soul, and started getting paid to do it. I always thought, how there's Cackling Jack and Giggling Ben and, and Dangerous Dave, all those names. I always wanted mine to be Sideshow Mike because of Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons, right? Now, when I put that to the first ever radio duo I was paneling for, which was Luke and Lewis, they all laughed at me, and then I decided to do Radio Mike instead, and it just kind of stuck.
I'm going to put my foot down here. I reckon you had it right the first time. Not that Radio Mike's bad, but I reckon Sideshow Mike, come on.
Sideshow Mike was good, wasn't it?
Everyone
really else laughed in my face, yeah. So anyway, most of the stuff I do is in some way just a homage to The Simpsons.
That's why you were on that first episode, mate, and all we spoke was The Simpsons. Did you see, I had Dean Rankin on. I don't know if you were ever a Simpsons comic buff, but...
I did see this episode. He's he's one of the artists?
One of the artists for the Simpsons comics, and he's done a bunch of shit. He's done the Futurama stuff, Rick and Morty as well, but... I kind of, to be honest, had forgotten of my Simpsons fandom extending to the comics when I was a kid. Going to the milk bar and there'd be Simpsons comics. That was a whole thing that I'd totally forgotten. And then I didn't even realize they were still being made up until a couple of years ago. So you kind of think it all stops with the show. But a bloke like yourself would have to be across, I would imagine, the various platforms that is The Simpsons, you know?
Well, ironically, I have never really been into the Simpsons comics, and the Simpsons comics always seemed like this other world that was non-canon to the actual Simpsons.
So true.
Weird and wacky stuff would happen in it. They'd have Futurama crossovers and stuff like that. So I always found that weird, but I'd love, if there was a way I could get a hold of all of the Simpsons comics, I would love to read them.
Well, it's funny you say that. I went and picked up this one here, right? So that was by Dean. So he wrote and illustrated that one.
And is that from the Milk Bar, or is that from
no?
somewhere?
The eBay is where that is from.
Yes, okay. The modern Milk Bar, the
modern
digital milk bar,
the digital Milk Bar, if you will. It was. I tell you, mate, they're expensive. They are super expensive. I mean, it's no surprise. I remember you and I spoke. Over a year ago now, and you were sort of touching on with me, you're I'm fascinated by comics, and I love the idea of comic books, but you kind of you were kind of coming to me hey, I see you've got your head around this whole world of comic books. I'm fascinated by it, but I just don't get it necessarily. You, and I see you sort of saying that now. You never really delved into that as a kid.
Well, it's actually funny you say that because I'm just gonna. I
can see your eyes darting around in your room.
Screen, and hang on, my light was balancing on this book that I'm about to hold up, so I just had to maneuver it. But I've got a couple. I've got Watchmen here.
Yes,
which I have not yet read, but I'm looking forward to reading that. And I also have, and I'm just gonna move my light out of the way to all the visual viewers. I've got Batman: The Long Halloween.
Did I recommend this?
Possibly. I remember that around when I was talking to you last, I was looking into getting into a few comics, and The Incredible Hulk, Planet Hulk, which I've been reading as well, and that's really cool. So I wanted to go a classic DC hero, a classic Marvel hero, and then Watchmen, which is DC.
Yeah.
But that's sort of almost unanimously considered to be one of the best graphic novels ever written. So I thought, why not get that? I also have a bunch of manga, which is Japanese, basically Japanese comics.
Totally not familiar with that whole world, but I've got mates which are just obsessed with it. It seems like there is a whole audience for. I don't even quite understand it. What is it? Just Japanese comics? Is it? Is that the idea?
Essentially, yeah. So the US comics always leaned pretty heavily into superheroes, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
A lot of manga is more like there is so much manga in Japan.
Okay.
And like just thousands and thousands of different manga series that all have varying degrees of popularity.
And not not superhero based, sort of just like
generally often they're supernatural or sci-fi kind of. There are superhero ones. And most popular anime, which is Japanese cartoons, possibly the best known ones are Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. Most of them have manga series. In fact, Dragon Ball Z is based on a manga. So the anime is just a retelling of the original, which was a comic book.
Oh, so Dragon Ball Z started as a comic book.
Yeah, and as did like many popular Japanese shows. For example, Death Note, which is a very good Japanese anime. Yeah, that was a manga as well.
It's become a big thing on Netflix, has it not? Is it a series on Netflix and they're doing a live action, I believe?
They did do a live action American adaptation a few years ago.
Yep.
It was very poorly received. I watched it and like didn't mind it, but if you go and watch the original Death Note show, it's genuinely one of the best written TV shows I've ever seen in my life. Like it's up there with like Breaking Bad. I know that's a huge call, but like in terms of like the suspense and intensity and mystery and all of that, like that's a must-watch TV show. And it's anime. And that started as a manga as well. So yeah, like I've dipped a little bit into that world as well. When I was in Japan, every time I go to Japan, I try to pick up a manga just for my collection. So I've got a few, but they're in the other room, so I won't go grab them.
Okay. Well, so in terms of the format, is it the same as a comic book? Like how you get a trade, like a normal comic book is like, what are they? Like 18 pages, and there's sort of the old Simpsons ones might have a ad in the front and an ad in the back, or is it all in those graphic novel style? Like, is it still the same? It's all the same concept, comic books?
It's pretty much the same. They read right to left as opposed to left to right because that's how they read over there. So you start from the box, like how the comic books have like the box grid or however it is. You start from the right as opposed to the left. So sometimes I get confused when I'm reading it because I'm like starting from the left and I'm like, hang on, how did we get here? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I've read it wrong. And yeah, I think they come out in similar to American comics where they come out in like volumes, small volumes, and then like something like this, the Planet Hulk that I'm holding, that's the full story, but it would have originally come out as like smaller portions, 5 or 6 different volumes or whatnot. So I think it works the same way as that. So you can buy them you can just buy them in the volumes.
Okay.
So yeah.
There you go. I feel like I've already learned something new. This is why I have you on, Mike, because I feel like your realm of pop culture, we have a lot of crossover, but we also spread off in different directions as well, which I find really good. So you did a season of your own podcast, pop culture podcast. You did that earlier this year.
Yes.
Now, I listened to episodes of it, and you would cover vastly different things to what I would cover, which, again, you and I have spoken about this. It's half the reason you do this sort of a podcast is because there's so much content out there. Yeah. But you can have totally no idea of how big some audiences are for certain things that you may not even be aware of. I mean, you're right into the gaming. Now,
I love video games.
that's something you're right into. Now, I am very basic in my video game exposure, and something has to really draw me. Now, are you the type of bloke that will you just try a video game with no, like, are you somebody that will see a new game come out and it's just a given that you'll go and buy it and try it?
I have spent so much money on video games that I've played for like 10 minutes. Like, I reckon, like, I just see a game and I just have to buy it. I'll play it for 10 minutes. And people are like, oh, you can take it back. And I'm like, I've got a massive collection of games. When I moved into this, I live in an apartment at the moment. When I moved out of mum and dad's, my dad was just like, you've got so many games. And I was like, Dad, like, I like games. Like, haven't you learnt this by now? Like, but yeah, I just spend so much money.
You've lived with me for 20 years. How have you raised me? How have you not?
Like, yeah. You bought me my Super Nintendo. It's your fault. Like, but for example, recently they released this thing called the Super Mario 3D All-Stars Collection, where they basically packaged 3 of the most popular Mario 3D platforming games, which is Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64, Super Mario Sunshine for GameCube, and Super Mario Galaxy for Wii. They packaged them into a pack of 3, and you can buy it on the Switch, and they're remastered and whatever. Yep. And I spent $80 on it. I played Super Mario 64 for 10 minutes. I'm like, I already played this game 20 years ago, and I've played the other 2. Why did I spend $80 on this?
Well, it's the nostalgia. It's the nostalgia. And I guess, the collection as well. So you are somebody that will go, well, I've got to have it. If everyone else is getting it, I better just get it. That's you.
Totally. And I think my mind kind of goes, I'm not going to replay these now. For some reason, my mind goes, one day you're going to be on a plane with your Nintendo Switch, and then you'll be grateful you bought it. Now, maybe you don't care at all that you bought it, but one day when you're on a long-haul flight to London, direct from Melbourne, when they have long-distance flights like that, you are going to play the whole Super Mario 64 on a plane ride, and you are going to be so grateful you bought it. So that's sort of where my mind goes.
It doesn't matter if you're out of money in the process. It's more about that make-believe Europe trip that you've got booked maybe sometime in the future.
It is. It's like the insurance that one day I'm going to be extremely bored and not able to do anything except play games. And I know that I'm equipped for that time. I'm not equipped for any other situation, but if I am on a plane, I will not run out of games to play. Ironically, every time I'm on a plane, I'm just like, I just can't be bothered playing games. I just want to go to sleep. So I don't know how it's going to work out.
I reckon it's the exact same with me with books. I don't read, Mike. I mean, comics, that's not reading, though. Yeah. Like, I'm not somebody that sits...
reading.
I don't sit down, though, and pick up a novel and sit there and turn, 20-odd pages. Like, my girlfriend will sit there and read for an afternoon. I'm not that guy. But what I am is similar to you, where I go... So, Jerry Seinfeld. I love Jerry Seinfeld, and he's brought a new book out. I pre-ordered the book. Yeah. And my girlfriend says... You got 4 books for your birthday, which you haven't even touched yet. Why are you getting this? And you know what I genuinely say? Well, when we're on a holiday, I might want to read by the pool. What do I do on a holiday, Mike? I scroll my phone. I just want it there because if I don't have the option, I'll be mad about not having the option. I totally get what you're saying. I get it. I buy shit for the same reason.
I do that. Like, I hoard books. I just I'm going to buy 3 books online and get them delivered. I'm going to spend $60 on them, whatever. And then they come and I'm like, I bought this book 2 years ago. It's still on my to-read list. Have you read any of the Seinfeld book?
No, it's pre-ordered, so it hasn't come yet.
Oh, it hasn't come yet.
All right, I'll give you an example.
Well, can I just say, that one barely even counts because I'm pretty sure it's just a collection of his stand-up material written down. So it's not like it's like... that doesn't really count as a book.
No, it really doesn't, and I still won't read it. But here's an example, right? So I went to Thailand last year, and I did. I took multiple books, Mike, and that's before you factor in the graphic novels I took. Now I broke out one of the books on this 3-week holiday, and started it, and I'm still working my way through it, and I've just crossed halfway. Like,
That's pretty good.
I'm a sporadic reader. I don't ever sit down and apply myself to it because there's more to do, especially in the world you and I live in. Why would I sit down and read something where, I could turn on, I would play the PlayStation before I'd read a book, or I'd watch something on one of the 8 streaming services that I'm signed up to. We live in a world where we're more progressed in terms of what we have as options for entertainment. We don't need to read the written word anymore.
I'm the biggest victim to this, and like, it's like we've gotten to a point, as you said, where it's just we're at maximum capacity for what you can consume. Like podcasts, TV, movies, streaming, video games, books, comics. Like there's actually just too much content now, right? And you know what? That's why like TikTok and Instagram Reels are so popular, because it's like, how little time do I have to commit to something but still feel good about it? And that's what a TikTok is. It's like 15 seconds and you'll probably laugh, right? Even though it's so disposable, like at the end of the day, my mind's like, I would definitely rather read a great book than watch 100 TikToks.
You would think.
But my brain will still be like, oh, I'm so bored, so I'll go on Reels. It's like the least time commitment. It's the quickest dopamine burst with the least time commitment. Like, I don't know. I hate it. I hate it.
I agree. And I can't help but think it could, at least for me personally, go back to... I'm the type of person where I'll start a new TV show and I'll watch the first episode and I'll be like... I've got another 9 episodes of this. They're all hours, so like that's 9 hours. I kind of wanted to watch that other thing too, but I can't start 2 at once. I need to like finish one before I can start the other. That's annoying. Now I've got to force my... Whereas TikTok, you feel like you're achieving something at the same time.
Yeah.
I've just watched 40 TikToks. I've done something. Yeah. So I think there is this validation of I'm achieving more by watching numerous of these than I am by committing to one show. I reckon you could trick yourself into that line of thought.
It's such a problem, because you think about how much more effort went into that season of that show as opposed to the 10 TikToks. And it's like, it's such a shame.
Well, there's actually something creative about it, like TikToks are pretty lowbrow.
Yeah. And it's crazy because sometimes I think I know for a fact there are episodes of The Simpsons that I love that it is almost certain I will never watch them again in my life.
Yep.
Like I will never watch every episode of The Simpsons again. Maybe I'll watch the ones I really, really like, but there are some episodes that I will just never watch again. And I love that show. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you gotta rewatch all of Seinfeld. You gotta rewatch all of like Friends. And I'm like, but that's such a commitment. That is such a commitment, and there's 7 new things coming out every day that you could do instead.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was sitting there, I constantly am sitting there thinking, I should go rewatch that movie. Now, movies are on a whole other scale. I mean, they're longer. And yes. I will think, you know what I'm going to watch tonight? I'm going to watch this, because I love that movie. I did it yesterday with Moneyball. I was like, I'm going to watch Moneyball. That is such a great movie. And then I sat down last night and I was going to watch something, and I did. I thought, I could watch Moneyball, but I should probably watch something new, something that I haven't seen, because there's so much. It's a waste of time to watch the things that I've seen that I liked, even though you like them. People used to buy VHS tapes. Yeah. And you would run that VHS tape into the ground. The tape would snap because you'd watch it so many times. E.T. On VHS would get a run. But no longer.
And you only had the 7 VHS tapes that your mum and dad bought for you. So you only could watch those movies. So it's it wasn't you know how you sit on Netflix and you're sitting there for hours being like, oh, should we watch this? Back in the day, it was are we going to watch The Lion King, The Land Before Time, or Inspector Gadget 2? Because we don't have any other choices. Maybe Big Daddy's on Channel 7 on a Friday night, but otherwise...
Then we're dealing with ads, so it's
so the toss-up. The Land Before Time VHS sometimes gets a little bit fuzzy in the middle, but, we can probably cope with that. Those are our choices for tonight. We're having friends over. We need to pick a movie. That's pretty much what it was.
We now constantly live in the Video Easy or Blockbuster, whichever you frequented as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have that choice maybe once a week, maybe maybe on school holidays more than once a week, and you'd get the selection. Your mum or your dad would go, all right, you can go over, you can pick one overnighter, one new movie, or you can get 3 of the weeklies. Now, because, it's the same
weeklies
price.
were the old movies.
Yep.
Not
And
as much demand.
But I would stand there for what felt like an hour in a kid's mind, but it was probably like, half hour, 40 minutes, because I don't imagine my parents letting me stay there much longer. But even back then, from that age, I was overwhelmed by options. I was like, well, I need to go into the thriller section, and Dad would be like, nah, come on, back over. Family, you've got kids, you've got comedy, you've got... And it was too much back then to make a decision in a short amount of time. Now we're faced with it every day that we log on to our streaming services.
Yeah, Blockbuster was always hard because they also had like TV shows on like seasons of TV shows. So so sometimes you're there being like, oh, I've got 2. Dad's letting me get 2 choices. Do I get The Mask with Jim Carrey, or do I get season 3 of the Rugrats? They're both. I would more value in the Rugrats because there's more episodes. Mask is a pretty good movie. Lots of fun. It's a bit scary for a kid, but I'll get through it. So yeah, you definitely. The eternal struggle. Then sometimes Dad's like, hey, you can rent a PS2 game this time. Oh my God.
I was gonna say that. Yeah.
The places you could rent.
I was going to ask, so you were somebody that would rent games. I was never that person, but there was obviously an option at some point in time. The games did enter the Blockbusters and Video Easies.
Yeah, and when you didn't have money, so your dad buys or your mum and dad buy all your games, maybe you get a game once a year at Christmas, right? So you go to the video shop and suddenly it's like, oh my God, like look at all these other games that we don't have that we can just rent and play for a week. And then you'd make it your mission to try and beat the game and experience everything in the game within the week that you've got it. I remember once we rented Donkey Kong 64, which is, for anyone who knows it, is a notoriously sluggish, massive game where there's so many different things to collect. And me and my brother played the shit out of it for a week. Couldn't beat it. So we went to take it back, and the guy put it back on the shelf, and we immediately got it again and rented it. So we gave it to him. He went, processed it, put it back. We go, pick it up. Yep, we're going to get this again. It was so funny.
Because I guess back then we had the memory cards, didn't we, to go into the PlayStation. So you just slot that in. It didn't matter when you had it, so you could take it back.
Your save data. Yeah.
Oh man, what a different time to be alive. That's my alarm. What a different time.
I really miss those times. I liked those walks to Blockbuster, and
they were simpler times, weren't they? They were just Friday nights. You didn't have to worry about what friendship group to go see, or where should we go out for dinner tonight. Dinner was sorted. Fish and chips for dinner. We'll go to the video shop on the way. Pick up dinner on the way back. Your plans were made for you. And it was just, it was
bliss.
It was bliss. But, we don't live in those times anymore. But what I want to talk to you about, because I saw you picked up this yourself.
Yeah.
The new Crash Bandicoot game, Crash Bandicoot 4.
Yeah.
Now,
it's about time.
Were you a fan of Crash Bandicoot growing up?
Yeah, I was. I only ever had Crash Bandicoot 3, which was Crash Bandicoot Warped on PlayStation 1.
Yes, one of the good ones, in my opinion.
Yeah, so Crash has a little bit of a tumultuous history. The first 3 games for PS1 were pretty much critically acclaimed and very popular, very good games, like highly considered pretty good, strong games. And then they were developed by a company called Naughty Dog, who then went on to develop games such as Jak and Daxter, and then The Last of Us is sort of their masterpiece. But after that, Crash got sold to a few other companies, and they made a few other games that were mixed in reception and didn't really do as well. And then they released a game called Crash of the Titans, which was a total game, like totally changed the genre, and people hated it. The series then laid pretty dormant for like 10 years until they released a couple years ago the Insane trilogy, and they remade and remastered the original 3 games, and people loved it.
Can
And
I
now
just
they've
pause
made
you?
the
Can I
true
pause
sequel.
you one
Yeah.
sec? Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Apparently, my Facebook's just been hacked.
Have you been hacked?
Apparently.
Jesus. What's it saying?
I don't know. I'm just getting a bunch of messages come through.
From people?
Yeah.
Is this going in the podcast? Because this
Oh,
is a
you know
game
what?
changer.
You know what? Maybe this might have to stay in. I have been hacked while we are in the middle of a podcast. Now, we've just...
Everyone's got a job. We're doing podcasts. This guy's doing hacking. Everyone's doing their thing.
How is it that you come to get hacked? Seriously, like
What is the message saying?
So I can't believe.
Change your password? Do you need to change your password?
Maybe that's what I'll do. First of all, this is just hot off the press. You're right, Mike. We're going to keep this in because this is.
Are you sure? We can take 5 if you need.
Nah. Let's roll with it. We're going to come back to Crash Bandicoot, but let's sort out my bloody hacking in the process. Have you been hacked before?
Yeah, and be careful because once I got hacked on my PlayStation, to bring it back to pop culture.
Yeah.
Where someone sent me an email that was like, your PlayStation has been hacked. Log in here to like find out what's happened.
Yeah.
And it took me to a page that looked like a legit PlayStation site, and I entered my username and password, and suddenly it turned out it was, they were baiting me to put that information in, and then they stole my PlayStation account and started spending with the card that was linked to it and buying games and stuff.
Oh, well, guess what?
Annoying.
I reckon I've got a card linked to this account too.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I'm finding out quickly here, Mike, is when you get hacked and everyone cops a message from you, you get a lot of messages back.
What are the messages that are being sent saying though? Are they like...
It's a video link.
Those spam links. That's a classic hack.
And it's a you appear in this video.
I
think you appear in this video.
Hacked.
Yeah, being hacked hard here. Now let's change my password.
And then if people click it, it like tries to
It probably hacks them because I actually think this might have happened yesterday because my uncle got hacked and he sent it into a group inbox and then all of us clicked it. So it can happen.
And what did it lead you to? Like when you clicked
nothing yesterday. It just went to a redirected link, which is very odd. All right, mate, let's take 5 here. I'm going to reset my password.
We'll take 5.
And we're just going to come abruptly back into this, okay?
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
So this is the last thing you'll hear.
Yep. Now. All right, Mike, we're back. Sorry about that. I've now corrected my Facebook hacking issues. We weren't talking about anything too scandalous. I don't think it was anything to do with the podcast directly, but I don't know what happened.
What actually happened to the listeners is Dan made up that he got hacked because I think we all know I was doing a pretty bad job. And then he said, sorry, man, I just made up that I got hacked because I think we should cancel it. And then basically I've spent about 15 minutes just saying, come on, just give me another shot, man. So now he's giving me another shot, which is very generous of him because he's a great
give me one more shot at explaining
guy.
Crash. Come on, I was so good. I'm so into it. No, look, it's
so
all sorted.
That's what we're doing now.
The Facebook is covered. Everything's okay. If you did get a message from me, hopefully the podcast Facebook's not compromised. God, there's so much tied up in your social media that you don't really consider, is there? Like
I know
bank cards, you've got accounts and pages that you run
Spotify,
off it. It's Spotify. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even consider Spotify. No, I think we're all good. I've reset the password and logged out the person from Adelaide. So whoever that was, go fuck yourself. And let's continue with the podcast. Now, we were talking about Crash Bandicoot. Now, you were giving us a bit of a rundown of the history of, I think we're up to around the area, but when I got distracted. Clash of, what was it?
Crash of the Titans.
Crash of the Titans. Now, there's the first 3 games, and then that's the 4th game that now this new 4th game has sort of tried to just act like never happened.
Well, there were a few other games. There was the original 4th one was called Wrath of Cortex. Then they did one called Twin Sanity, which I have a soft spot for, but that's another story. Then they changed the whole thing up with Crash of the Titans and then Crash Mind Over Mutant. But essentially this new game, Crash Bandicoot 4, is more or less saying that everything after Crash Bandicoot 3 didn't happen, and they're sort of making it a clean slate from there.
Yep.
Because Wrath of Cortex, which was the fourth Crash game, never had the number 4 in its name, except in Japan where it was called Crash Bandicoot 4. But now they've pretty much just said, nah, none of that ever happened. A nice little retcon for the series.
It's not the first. I feel like it's not the first game, or at least not the first form of media to try and just retcon like this. But
yes, Spider-Man does it all the time.
Well, Spider-Man certainly does it all the time, and then now attempts to try and bring it all back together. But
yeah,
it's sort of sounding like you're maybe a Crash apologist, if you will, for those games that came later on after the first 3. It sounds like you were a bit of a fan.
I only played Twinsanity, which was, they sort of turned it into a more open world kind of Crash game. And I really liked it. And the music and soundtrack of that game, I still think is one of my favorite game soundtracks of all time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I never played Crash of the Titans or Mind Over Mutant, but I've heard like pretty bad things about them. But I think people get really upset when things change anyway. So yeah, that the original trilogy and the remakes and this one are what I'm gonna consider to be the best games in the series from here.
Okay, so let's talk the new game then. So I feel it very much keeps up with the first 3. I feel like it feels like a continuation, and you could play each game back to back to back, and relatively feel like it's all in the same universe, like what we're saying.
Yeah.
Do you agree that I reckon it's a winner, this new Crash game?
Yes. So you've got it?
I've got it. I've been playing it. Loving it.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, great, man. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's certainly the natural succession. Like, it is what Crash 4 always should have been, and they've put a lot of careful thought into that, I think. It's exceptionally hard, and they always have been. Like, Crash for being, like it's a cartoony kids game, but they are extremely hard games, particularly if you want to go for the 100% run, which is where you get every crate on every level, and do time trials, which is where you beat the levels extremely quickly without dying. Which I have done in the first 3 Crash games. I am endeavoring to do it. Yeah, I'm endeavoring to do it in Crash 4, but it's been so hard so far. But yeah, they are extremely hard games.
Well, that's where that's where I sort of probably differ from you, in that this is where you're an experienced campaigner in the gaming world. You've got the patience to go back and redo a level if it means being able to get that, all complete gems. And whereas I'm just grateful to be able to get through a level and have done it. But I mean, one of the gems in this game, I don't know if it was in the old 3 games, but the 3 death rule. Like, if you die more than 3 times, that is hard. I can't. And like sometimes I'll be getting real close, and then I hit a checkpoint, but then I die multiple times on that checkpoint.
But that's the thing. Like, that's why the time trials are so hard, because you like, if you want, you can do the levels really slowly and just literally just wait everything out. But if you're doing a time trial, you have to do it as fast as possible without dying. So you literally pretty much have to do a perfect run of the level. They are so hard, like impossibly hard at times.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I guess because what I've been doing with it is, admittedly, I've been playing with other people a little bit. And so there was this feeling I had of incompleteness. I was sort of playing and we were getting through levels, but there was 4 of us playing, and I got to be honest, I wasn't contributing a whole bunch. I'd get us a checkpoint, but I was never. I'd fall over at the last hurdle towards the end of the level, so that I had to go out, get my own copy of the game, and start my own game of it, because Crash is this sort of game where it's very fulfilling if you're able to start really ticking off not only the levels, but majority of the gems. So it's freaking addictive, man. Like, for somebody like me, where I am not a big gamer and it takes a lot for me, I'm starting to realize that my thought of the type of fan of gaming I would have been of those games which are largely narrative based, like your Last of Us or any of those games that are almost like long films. But
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize
That's the opposite of what I like.
Okay, well, because I'm starting to realize I think I'm more of the quick hit sort of person. I want to just jump in, a lot of action. I mean, Crash, there is a story, but I tend to skip it. I tend to skip the story parts.
Yeah. Well, the story, I mean, the story in games like Crash is just like, you need to save the world, and it like, who cares how it happens? I just want to play the game. And then like now games, and I've talked about this a fair bit, but like games like Last of Us, like they're amazing games, don't get me wrong, but like sometimes I feel like even like something like Assassin's Creed, like you start the game and you're sitting there for like 20 minutes doing nothing while there's like 100 cutscenes playing, introducing the lore of the game. Then they finally like let you control the character, and then you walk for like 5 minutes, and then there's another cutscene and you have to listen to people talk. Whereas in Crash, it's just like, bam, you're playing now. You know how to play. It hasn't changed. It's sort of the same as why I like the Mario platformers and stuff, because it's just like, okay, you have to save the princess. I don't care. I just want to play the game. Like I know how to play it.
I think it's that, and it's a mix for me of also the nostalgia of it. And that's what I really appreciate about not only this new game but the remasters as well. I believe I remember reading that with the remasters of the first 3 Crash games, they went back and increased the speed of the character. Like the movement was all a lot quicker, so it was more difficult, even though like
there was a few physics changes, so it wasn't 1-to-1.
Yeah. And so because as you grow up, I mean, I went back and played Spyro. Did you get into the Spyro when that was remastered?
I've got the Spyro Reignited trilogy. Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was fine. I only ever had Spyro 3, so I played 1 and 2, and I thought it was fine. I don't think they're as good as Crash, though.
No. And I can't put my finger on why, because I remember loving it as a kid, but there's something about the Crash games that really still hold up. Like, and I don't know if it's because of the gameplay, whereas like with Spyro, I felt, and it did come after the remaster of the Crash trilogy, so I'd had that experience, and then I played Spyro, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, it's a bit slow. The stakes didn't feel as high in it. The stakes feel very high in Crash. I don't know why for a stupid game. No,
because Spyro's much easier as well. Like Spyro's 3D kind of, each world is sort of quite open. You can do different missions. Crash, it's just like, it's all thrown at you at once, and you have to get from the starter level to the end. And it is super intense because like, sometimes you're at a checkpoint, and then you could die 50 times between there and the checkpoint. And you're just like, oh my God, I just want to get past this bit, but I'm dying in the same spot every time. I just can't pass it. Like it's borderline impossible. Yeah. So yeah, I think Spyro is a bit easier as a game. And I think there's not as much as that constant danger in Crash.
Yeah. And I think as an adult playing these games, you need that. I don't know. The stakes need to be a bit higher, especially for these games which came out, especially Crash. What were they, like early 90s or something? They were pretty...
Crash would have been mid to late 90s, yeah. The originals.
I mean, you look at how far games have come now. You got to really try and find a way to keep people interested. As I was saying before, like a lot of these movies that are getting all the attention these days are those movies which are kind of like, games which are kind of like movies. Whereas these simpler games, like what you were talking about, you were a massive Mario Kart person, not Mario Kart, but Mario, the world of Mario. What is that called?
Just like the Super Mario
franchise.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're such simple games, but they still have such a following, which I don't know. Well, I don't know what it says about it, but
I think like they're definitely simple games, but I think people underestimate like a lot of those games, including Crash and including a lot of the mainline Mario games, like they're pretty universally respected games for like a lot of Mario games are considered to be some of the best video games of all time. For example, many people regard Super Mario 64 as one of the best video games ever developed. Many people regard Super Mario Galaxy as one of the best video games ever developed. So I think people see Mario and they think, oh, bloody, that's it. That's just a stupid kids game. But it's like, well, actually, like these are considered like Super Mario Galaxy is like the Pulp Fiction of video games. Like it
Yeah.
is that acclaimed and universally considered to be one of the best games you can play. And so is The Last of Us, which is, you know, they're on two completely different sides of a continuum in terms of how they look, how
Yeah.
they play, and what they are. But they're both considered to be phenomenal, which I think is really great.
Yeah, it's certainly it's an interesting genre, the gaming, because you don't really get that with a lot of other mediums. You don't really get that with movies. You don't. So like with a movie, you look at the Oscars, right? And you don't.
Yeah, I just realized do you have a Pulp Fiction poster behind you?
Yeah, you actually do.
I think I like subliminally channeled that, and that's why I said Pulp Fiction.
You must have, because that's a weird pull to pull out of nowhere.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I was just going to say that you look at the Oscars and you don't see comedies nominated for an Academy Award. You don't see.
No.
I mean, you kind of see a kids' film, I guess, but it's got its own genre. You don't see it nominated for Best Picture, but in gaming, the rules and the barriers seem to be removed a little bit. I guess you could maybe say it to a lesser degree in TV, but I'm kind of realizing that gaming seems to be everything's put on the same level of appreciation, and you're able to enjoy everything without having that judgment of, hey, that's a kid's game, or that's, you know, at least to people in that world like yourself. I mean, as you said, you might go to your dad and say, oh, I've been playing Super Mario. And he goes, that's a kid's game. What are you playing that for? But that's somebody that doesn't have an understanding or appreciation for it.
It's like when people, like, you know, people see like the new Pixar movie and people are like, oh, why are you seeing like a kid's movie? But it's like, well, like Toy Story, for example, take Toy Story, is considered a great film. Like, critically.
Did you just pull that out as well? Because I'm wearing a Toy Story t-shirt.
No, I didn't. Oh, you're wearing a Buzz Lightyear t-shirt. Shit. Okay, let's change it then. What is
going on with your mind at the moment? You're pulling these things out.
And that's not He-Man behind you, is it? Or is that a WWE?
No, that is Triple H. That is a wrestler.
Right, yeah, okay, that's not He-Man.
Try and work that in later. Yeah, continue.
But a lot of those early Pixar movies are considered masterpieces, not just in animation, but in storytelling in cinema. So I think a lot of people, especially men, tend to dismiss more animated, cartoony, childlike looking things. When, you know, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because a lot of these things are highly regarded.
Yeah. All you got to do is look at things like Archer. We're talking animated TV shows now. Archer, Rick and Morty, both of those, two of the bigger animated series out there at the moment, and they're both definitely skewed to an adult audience. There's no doubt about that. And often the biggest shows are, like, even The Simpsons, when that started, there was a massive adult following of it. It was, you know, probably meant for kids, but a lot of the humor in The Simpsons was directed at adults. A lot of only jokes adults would understand. And you could make the argument that's how they get so big, is because they target an adult audience. Therefore, everything goes up. Obviously, advertisers' money go up for ads on the show because, let's be honest, the demographic they want, 18 to 34-year-old males, are who spend money. Everything that makes a successful animated show is usually the ones that are skewed towards an adult. Now, obviously, you have the other shows, which are, you know, you get Frozen, the movie, or you get, I don't know, what animated kid shows are there? Like Rugrats. I reckon I could watch a Rugrats now and enjoy it, but that might just be nostalgia. But there's definitely, like, Batman the Animated Series. I don't know if you ever came across that as a kid. That is a dark show that is directed at adults. That is it's considered one of the best animated films ever, series ever.
And Adventure Time had a really strong following as well, and stuff like Regular Show and
South Park,
Bob's Burgers. I think South Park was the OG in this,
probably,
because I personally think South Park is the greatest satire of all time. I think that show is just it's comedic genius, and you know how like everyone talks about cancel culture? Like, I think when South Park gets cancelled by cancel culture, that's the end of satire. Like, if South Park
Yeah.
gets cancelled, that's it. But South Park was always that show that like it was a cartoon directed at adults, but all young kids wanted to watch it because you knew it was rude and you weren't allowed to watch it.
Yep.
Like, that show is so crass and crude. That's why I wanted to watch it, because I wanted to know all these naughty words. And like, I watched the South Park movie, which I think has the world record for most times the word fuck is said in a movie. I watched it when I was 10 years old, and that I reckon it's responsible for ruining my life, because I learned so much stuff from it that I just shouldn't have known until like at least 5 years later.
It's probably you know what, that fuck record is probably a record they would have deliberately set out to break, I would imagine. Feels
probably.
like something like that. It is interesting with South Park though, because you say the whole thing about cancel culture. I think I did an episode that largely we spoke about cancel culture a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of feels like South Park is the one unattainable achievement for those responsible for cancel culture to get. It's the one gem in their crown, or jewel in their crown. What does that say?
Yeah,
that they can't.
It's one of those two.
It's one of those two. It's something like that. You might need to rearrange the words. That they can't get. It seems like South Park sort of just, it's escaped so much at this point that anything that would be able to get them now would kind of feel like, oh, that's what was that was the straw that broke the camel's back? Really? That doesn't feel like, compared to what they'd done in the past. I mean, I still vividly remember that Steve Irwin episode where they did the stingray in the chest. In hell. Yeah,
but that made news here in Australia. Like, but that was like way before cancel culture. But
yeah,
like, I just think when you're so good at making fun of all these fucking, I don't know, like all these social constructs and all these like they make fun of everything on every side. So it's like, who's canceling them? Because like they'll make fun of the right wing and they'll make fun of the left wing and they'll make fun of every single thing. So it's like, I'm really excited to see what they do with this year when they come back.
Did you watch the pandemic special? Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So walk me through. I haven't seen it yet. Did they really push the barriers of it all, or was it a largely Trump-centric episode? Or
there was like a little bit on Trump, a little bit on Black Lives Matter, and commentary on like the American police system, which was, you know, pretty standard South Park satire, and then a lot on the whole thing is like Randy's created a new kind of weed, which is called the pandemic special weed, and he's the whole thing is basically a satire of itself, where they're saying no one needs this pandemic special, but we're doing it anyway, right? That's pretty much the whole premise. It's a meta self-reflection of it, and you know there's political satire. It was pretty good. It was good to have them back.
Have you seen the documentary series 6 Days to Air?
Yes, I love that.
That is, like, I never grew up on South Park. It was never something like The Simpsons, and then from there, I sort of transitioned straight into Family Guy. South Park never really came across my radar. So, but I always had this appreciation for it, as anyone would that enjoys, you know, comedy at all. And somebody recommended it might have even been Tim. Tim recommended watching 6 Days to Air, and I finally found it was friggin' hard to find. And it's, as you know, a documentary series that follows them the last week before a series is going to debut, I believe. So, they produce episodes weekly, I believe, in terms of the week that an episode's coming out, they're working on that episode that week. Like, it's real tight.
Essentially, a South Park episode is produced to air in 6 days.
Yeah.
And that means writing, producing, animating, voice acting, cutting, editing, like everything is done in 6 days. And
which is a huge feat.
Yeah, so something like The Simpsons, there's like a 3-month turnaround between like voice acting and animating and putting it to air. South Park 6 days. And there's only one time they missed a deadline when there was a power outage at the studios where they worked. So they couldn't do an episode that week at all. But yeah, I think it's incredible, and it's why they're able to be so satirical and topical, and they're pretty much responding to news of that week. The big issues of that week are then turned into an episode, and like no other animated show can be as reactionary as that because of the turnaround times.
It's quite amazing.
I think it's so cool.
Yeah, to watch that. And I mean, the writing process is one thing that you naturally have an appreciation for. You're like, how do they come up with this shit? But then to see their whole office building and the different departments within it, and these two guys oversee it all, and they're largely the ones, they have final say on everything, and right up until that last minute they're working their ass off, and then they finish a season and they just, you can understand why there's a fair turnaround between seasons now, because it would take a massive toll on you. And yeah, that documentary really gave me an appreciation not only for the show, but those guys that create it. They're on another level of creativity for sure.
Totally, yeah. So they obviously, this is a fact that everyone spurts out, but they are also behind the Book of Mormon. Trey Parker, who is the main, he's sort of the main writer, and Matt Stone. Trey Parker is a really, really good musician, and he's, he wrote most of the songs I think all of the songs.
Amazing
in the Book
musical,
of Mormon.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Don't forget Team America. Don't forget Team America. Great movie.
Yeah. I mean, no, but when you think, actually think about the song America Fuck Yeah from Team America.
Yeah.
That song achieves every single thing it needs to achieve. It's just a total send up of American culture.
Yeah. And the patriotism of Americans it's hilarious.
And it's such a stupid song, but it's looking at it from a comedy angle, what did that song need to achieve? And the grungy, the vocals, the guitars, everything about it is just such a funny satirical thing. And that's they did an episode of South Park called Good Times with Weapons, where half of the episode is in an animation style, right?
Yeah.
And there's a song in there that's the intro to this anime where they're all ninjas and stuff, and it's called Let's Fighting Love. And the whole song is a send up of English and anime openings, which sometimes just randomly feature English lyrics.
Yeah.
And the whole, look it up. I'm not going to sing it because I might get in trouble, but look up on YouTube, South Park Let's Fighting Love. And anyone who's ever seen a Japanese anime, you will just recognize so many conventions of it. It's such spot on satire. It is so good.
They've got it down to a fine art at this point, the satire. They do it. I mean, SNL for a lot of people, Saturday Night Live, is, a lot of people consider that the benchmark of satire, but I think that's just because it's been around for so long, 40 plus years now. I think at the end of the day, in terms of just totally the barriers removed, no limits at all on what you can and can't do, you can't go past South Park. What those guys create is just, it is mind-blowing. You watch an episode, you're like, how the fuck were they allowed to do that? That is just, Well,
and can I just do one more fun fact about South Park?
Yeah.
The one time they got properly censored by Comedy Central, the one time it happened was when they wanted to show Muhammad on screen. And part of the Islam faith is you cannot have any depiction of Muhammad. So there was serious controversy around it. So they censored a lot of that episode. However, I think about 6 years earlier in a previous episode, they did show Muhammad totally as a character with no repercussions. So it's really weird how within that time frame it changed so much.
Is that because it changed, or is that because when they originally did, when they were going to do it and they got censored, was that the vocal point of the episode? And so therefore the networks were more aware of it, or?
No, you're right. That the original appearance was as part of part of the Super Best Friends, which was a team of superheroes that were actually religious idols. Like Jesus was one of them, Muhammad, and who the Buddha or whatever. And then in the episode, the new one that got censored, that episode was actually all focused on the fact that you can't show Muhammad. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone's faith or anything, but
it's just an example of the barriers that they try and push and the constant roadblocks that they'd find themselves facing. And a lot of shit that you wouldn't even know. They would be coming up with this stuff, probably not being aware of, we can't do that? Oh, okay. It is interesting because it gives you an idea of just how the censorships do work, especially when it comes to religion. If they can't do it, you really can't do it. One
other thing on a similar note, and this, like, I won't have any fun facts after this, I promise. But
big South Park guy.
I was actually I was editing a podcast because I do that. That's my job. I was editing one of Will Anderson's podcast, and he loves South Park, and he was saying this fact, so it's fresh in my mind. But there's an episode of South Park called "Trapped in the Closet," and I think the joke in the episode is that Tom Cruise, the actor, is refusing to come out of a physical closet.
I remember this. This was great.
The joke is they're trying to make a joke that maybe he's in the closet and he's gay, but they couldn't say that. They couldn't say that. So the whole joke is he's literally inside a closet and won't come out. And they're just saying, "Hey, Mr. Cruz, do you want to come out of the closet?" and stuff like that. One of the great examples of their ability to, okay, we can't do that. All right, well, instead of scrapping it, let's just find a way we can do it. Find a way.
And not having any fear at all for what may
it's
come.
Crude, it's offensive, it's inane, like it's all. But it's
you've got me wanting to watch South Park now.
but it's intelligent. Like it is like. So I think, I'd love to come on and talk more about South Park because I really do love.
We might have to do a South Park episode because, to be honest, the more you've spoken about it, and I've seen it's now on Amazon Prime for anyone that's listened to this and gone, I want to watch South Park. They've got all of them on on Amazon Prime. So you've reminded me. You got the appetite a little bit for South Park again. That might have to happen. Maybe we'll have to look at it and maybe an episode at some point. I might start with the pandemic special. And go from
do
there.
that. Totally, man. That'd be great.
Mate, you before I let you go, you've just released an exciting new project. I don't know how you kept this under wraps from me because for anyone here in Australia, actually, you know what? Hell, anywhere around the world, they're huge at this point. They've got a presence in America. They've done gap years everywhere. You're working alongside Hamish and Andy these days. Now you have been for a little while, but you've got a new project that you're part of with them. Now, walk us through it.
Yeah. Well, it's not my project,
no,
so
it's
I
theirs,
don't want to take. I don't want to take any credit for that.
You're in
my
it.
Project.
You're in it, so that's all that matters.
Yeah. So Hamish and Andy, this is a plug. Hamish and Andy are doing a new project called Hamish and Andy's Remembering Project, and it is them looking back at their nearly 20 years on air. On radio and podcasting, and I have a very, very, very small role. I want to stress that a lot. Dan's making it sound like Dan's making it sound like I'm running it. I have a very small role, and I'm doing all the sponsorships as well. So I'm the one trying to sell you all the products. And
are you producing?
That's how no, I'm not producing it. I'm just on it.
You're now. You're good friends with Jack, and I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form as a replacement plug for yourself on Jack, but you're almost acting in that cackling Jack capacity within the show. That's a good spot. You're jacking. Is that what Jack told you himself? I feel like that sounds like something that's been spoken about.
No, I just came up with that.
Text that on the spot. Him. That's gold. Yeah. I like that a lot.
But that's fun, so you can check that out. Yeah. Oh,
listen to it today. Grouse. Anything Hamish and Andy. This is why it's exciting. I mean, you're sitting there being like, don't say I'm doing it. Like I'm not coming up with all this stuff. No, but you and I both grew up in that era of when Hamish and Andy were becoming the powerhouse that they now are. Huge fans of Hamish and Andy. So that's exciting stuff. It's great. Listening to you today, I was like, have a listen to him, hey? Little cackling
thanks,
Mike, little podcast Mike, just doing his thing with Hamish Andy, just throwing around a bit of banter. Very exciting.
Yeah, and I am playing it down. I do consider it a massive privilege, and it's a lot of fun, and and I'm really grateful for the opportunity as well. So if you like them, check it out. If you don't like them, but would like to experience some of their best material to maybe find out if you do like them, this is actually a great opportunity for that.
Little appetizer to the main course that is their whole friggin' career.
Yeah. So, and then it's Mondays and Tuesdays wherever you podcast. So that's a lot of fun.
Enough about them. They've got more than enough publicity, especially from here. Yeah. We've got such a wide-ranging audience. They don't need any more exposure. Yourself, Mike, your podcast, what's going on with that? You are a man of podcasts. You've got multiple. What's happening? What's running at the moment? What's coming up?
All right. At the moment, you can listen to my solo podcast, 20th Century Boy, where it's inspired a little bit by Hamish and Andy. I do a bunch of fun segments. I talk about my zany life as a 20-something-year-old trying to make his way in this rough and tumble world of being in your mid-20s. Yeah. And that comes out every Thursday. I took a bit of a break, but it is now officially back. Yeah. And you can follow me on Instagram, radio.mike. I will say for any Harry Potter fans, I am very close to launching a spin-off podcast of 20th Century Boy, which is called Harry Potter and the Boys, and it is me reading Harry Potter fan fiction that I wrote when I was in Year 7.
Mate, because you read some of these on 20th Century Boy, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
This has been a podcast needing to happen for some time.
So, and I want to get people on reacting to it. So you should definitely come on as well, Dan.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I read it out and people react and we talk about what was going through Mike's 13-year-old mind when he wrote this chapter of Harry Potter where Harry Potter does a huge poo in his office, which does happen in the book. So enjoy.
I'd love to come on and hear what 13-year-old Mike had to say about Harry Potter. So pencil me in for it for sure. Mate, thanks for joining the podcast. It's been a little bit too long between podcasts for us. First of all, episode 1 all the way up to episode 45. Come back a little sooner next time. Admittedly, I didn't reach out, but you're a busy man with your podcast. It's just
I will come on this show anytime. This is so much fun.
That's why they call you Podcast Mike.
Radio Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, man.